There's loads of stuff out there about what to do if you're really anxious, but usually those things are short-term things that you can use now that help you, but they don't really get rid of your anxiety in the long term. So things like breathing or exercise, stuff like that. We know they're helpful, but my anxiety doesn't really go away. I'm sort of managing it, if you like. So I'm going to talk to you about short-term solutions in the present day versus what do I do to get rid of it in the long term. CBT looks at it like this. If you're anxious about something now, odds are you have had past experiences that have taught you that that thing is scary. So some of that's really obvious. If you've been bitten by a dog, you're more likely to be scared of dogs. If it's less obvious, such as you're actually more likely to be afraid of being laughed at if you've been laughed at before. Even less obvious is your past experiences also include messages you've been given about failing or about what your expectations should be. So, for example, if you've got rules or expectations of yourself that are very high, in the present day, you might find yourself worrying about failing a lot. So worrying about getting it all done, worrying about not having done enough in a day, that kind of stuff. It's not always immediately obvious. So if we just apply sort of generic help, so, all right, do breathing or do exercise, that will really help manage the physical stuff in the moment, but it might not tackle those underlying things that are still there. And so it will keep going. So stuff like breathing really helps bring down your body once you've already started getting anxious. Exercise tends to be helpful, just generally really about well-being, but you might also get stuff about thinking. So people might tell you, oh, catch yourself when you're catastrophizing, or they might do sort of mindfulness stuff, which is still a thinking intervention in the present day, which is I'm catching myself off worrying and I'm just going to bring myself to the present. That can be very helpful. But what do we do beyond that to solve things in the long term? So what's the point in understanding the history? The point of understanding the history is that you can break patterns. So for example, if some of your anxiety is about expectations of yourself that are too high, if we don't do anything about that, it's just going to keep going. So if we can know you, not just generically, we can know you specifically, you can find things that will tackle your anxiety in the long term. And a lot of that usually is breaking the pattern by using exposure or trying to do something different. So for example, if you want to get rid of your fear of dogs for the long term, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce you to dogs and get you to sit with it for a long, long time until eventually it doesn't bother you anymore. Fear of being laughed at. We'll get you to do things where you get people to sort of look at you or put yourself in positions where it feels very uncomfortable until you feel comfortable with it again. If it's about high expectations, we might get you to practice not doing things perfectly all the time. And eventually that will feel comfortable and you won't feel as anxious about it in the first place. That's the idea.